Hello, and welcome to another gameplay analysis video. Today we're going to be looking at another viewer submission, and today's hero is Amaj. So before we start, I want to start by thanking Amaj for sending in a replay code. Once again, having viewers that are willing to have this type of thing posted on the internet is such a nice feeling. Additionally, another note about this game is actually a Super Blitz game, and although I had no restriction to the type of replay code sent to me before, I decided that I would prefer not to do any more Blitz games in the future. I generally have done my fair share of playing Super Blitz, and I do find it enjoyable to play at times, but I know from experience that the quality of play is much lower because of the time limit. But the thing that makes it even worse is that there is a very high rate of abandonments in Blitz games. I think having bots is a very unenjoyable experience to play with, and it's even more unenjoyable to commentate around. And I bring this up because Hippie actually abandons very, very early in this game, and I think it just makes the quality of play much worse for other players. So once again, as for player introduction, Amaj is in first position, our hero. Hippie, the abandoner, in second position. Jerry in third position, and Gabriele in fourth position. Gabriele is actually rated 1475, and with that rating, I do believe that Gabriele is also a relatively active tournament player. So that makes me expect his quality of play to be a little bit higher. 1500 is totally a reasonable rating, and I think it's just solid overall. Anyways, going on to the Leader and Wonder overview as usual. The strongest strategy that I like to point out again is I think that theaters are very well supported in this game. There's Marlena and Chaplin with Hollywood support, as well as Age 2 leaders in Shakespeare, Gaudi, and Bach that could lead you up those paths. Another strategy I think is strong is that the colonization game is very much in this one. Sun Tzu is the starter, into Columbus, into Cook with Suez as well. And then the two best wonders for colonization are Fast Food Chain and Red Cross are also here as well. Also, additionally, if you have extra yellow tokens, Nelson Mandela is a good colonization leader cap, even though he's more of just a general leader. Other support, other leader wonder support is that there's a little bit of support in labs with Gates and Meyer. No spaceflight, no Manhattan, but there is internet to feed off of Meyer, and a little bit of Marie as well. Additionally, Marie is supported by Watt, but there is no railroad, so you're not really going to get the highest production that easily. As usual, I like to point out that I think irrigation is a little bit stronger of a tech with Ocean Liner, Statue, and Machu Picchu all in the game. And with colonization in general, you don't need, and if you're colonizing a lot, you don't really need a lot of food income. You just need a little bit to help jumpstart it as well. One other thing that I want to note is that aside from Michelangelo and Columbus, I do believe that there are a lot of Strength Matters leaders with Khan, Nostradamus, Joan, Jishka, and Saladin. I already think just from looking at the Age 1 leaders, with the Age 1 Wonders of Great Wall and Himeji, that strength could really play a factor, especially with a Sun Tzu starter. Although he's not on the row at the moment, if Sun Tzu Jishka is into play, or Sun Tzu and Khan is in play with Great Wall, you can really push a lot of strength for people who are not thinking about strength at all. Anyways, going on to the game, we can see that Amaj here takes Hippocrates. In general, my first position pick would probably be Homer, since he's a little bit stronger in first and second position. But Hippocrates is actually pretty fine as well here. I think the idea of maybe stacking yellow tokens with Roman roads, even though it's probably going to be taken, or with Statue, or having extra yellow tokens for Mandela, might actually be reasonable ideas. I still generally prefer Homer, but Hippocrates is a totally fine pick here. Hippie takes Ashoka and Cultural Heritage. I probably would take a Wonder in this position, but it's whatever. Jerry takes Richland and Homer. I, again, would probably take a Wonder in this position, but Gabriele takes Roman Roads and Patriotism. And before I go too far, I once again want to reiterate that because this is a review of another person's game, I'm going to mostly focus on Amaj and her playstyle, as opposed to trying to go over all of the others. Trying to find improvements in too many people, it's just a lot of effort and just takes too much bandwidth. I will, however, note when the other players signal something that Amaj should read in her gameplay, and how she should adjust accordingly to it. And then once again, I do not have the information for the Amaj's military cards. So a lot of the plays, which I may deem as inefficient, might have something to do with knowledge of the event deck. So Amaj's first turn, basically the standard stuff. Elects, increase population, builds a mine, and takes stockpile here. So already a little bit deviation. I would probably take Urban Growth or Acropolis. There is a guaranteed Age 1 Wonder to come out because Gabriele already has Urban Roads. So if you don't mind Coliseum, Library, or Hanging Gardens, any one of those three, it is a guaranteed thing to skip Acropolis. I just think that Stockpile is a little bit too action inefficient, and the only people who really take Stockpile are usually Ashoka if they need a yellow card in hand, or Hammurabi who has extra civil action. Hippie elects Ashoka, takes Acropolis, built a mine, and increased population. So standard things for the most part. Jerry built a mine, increased population, takes Engineering Genius. Also probably pretty standard. Gabriele takes Sun Tzu, elects, builds a mine, increased population. So more standard things, but something you have to note that because Sun Tzu was elected, I mean, it was the only option, you have to value knights a little bit higher in this game. Even in 4th position, Sun Tzu can threaten medieval armies, and if you're the person without knights, you can get in a lot of trouble. Granted, there is a little bit of relief if you go for Khan or Nostradamus to get a little bit extra strength. I still think it's important to look out if Sun Tzu gets knights, though. Anyways, Amaj has Coliseum and Library as available wonders on one civil action. So Seeds, post-development politics, takes Library, takes Iron here. And then builds a step on Library. I think you could possibly build a lab here and risk not having a free population. Basically what it does is that it gives you an extra science to maybe develop with trade routes or civil life, or develop out this iron with trade routes or civil life and start going for it right away. But something you have to know is that these lower level type games, usually people seed very, very prolifically, and there is a very high chance that the development of warfare or the development of religion will come out in the next turn. So I think this is fine to not go into to have this free worker, I mean. Hippie Seats, post-development warfare, so rewarded for leaving the population free. Takes Engineering Genius, builds a top on Acropolis, takes Breakthrough. Jerry elects Homer, goes for Coliseum, increased population, and reveals Fighting Band already. So with Fighting Band revealed already, you can value these swordsmen a little bit higher. Gabriele Seeds, flips trade routes, increases population, takes development of warfare, takes knights, and builds a step on routes. So already you have to signal, because Sun Tzu has taken knights, you have to value those knights pretty highly. In general, I would just start thinking about strength overall, just because Sun Tzu is a warping leader in that manner. So Amaj here, I want to pause before the turn goes. Amaj in this position has a pretty distinct best set of actions, in my opinion. So this free worker is going to go into a warrior here. And something to note is that the blue bank is pretty far back already, so we're in pretty deep corruption. I think the best move is to finish Library, take Swordsman, and increase population. Increasing population allows us to get out of corruption, so I do think that building, increase population are basically mandatory. And then we have to look at what we think the best card in the row is. It could be Columbus if we have vast territory or inhabited already. I think I mentioned Swordsman already because I think that strength is an important thing in this game. I'm going to discount both yellow cards just because I don't think we're going to be action efficient enough. And definitely going to discount Alchemy as well. We already have Library. All we need to do is build another lab here to get pretty much good science production throughout H1. So in general, I think that Swordsman is the best pickup. There are cases in which Columbus is the best pickup, but those cases are more specific. This all has to be done without seeding because we're already so far deep into our blue bank that if we seed and get extra resources in any manner, we won't be able to spend them. So that being said, Amaj seeds here, which is why I needed to bring this up. And it's really, really hard to get out of this deep of corruption. So in order to do that, Amaj has to increase population twice and then make an extra warrior to do that as well. So we'll see that from here. We'll take Alchemy, which I think is one of the worst cards in the row to take. It's probably worse than Rich Land. It's definitely worse than Swordsman, and yeah. And then built one step of the library, and then built another warrior. So here we're in a position where we're building 3 warriors. We don't have Swordsman. We didn't finish library this turn. I feel like this turn was made worse because we seeded. So something that all players should do is just look at the turn that you can make and how it can potentially be messed up by the event deck. It was just something to consider, and this turn would have been a lot cleaner if we didn't have to try to struggle to get out of corruption. Granted, this turn still could have been made. Definitely don't take Alchemy, take Swordsman instead, just because you've already built the 3 warriors already. And even though that Swordsman is not as strong, there is still con in the game, as we mentioned before. Oh, and then we even have Legion. So if we have Legion, we have 3 warriors, we definitely should be having Swordsman here. Hippie finishes Acropolis, takes Columbus. Yeah, and takes pretty deep corruption here. Jerry seeds, flips development planning. Options are settlement, markets, or religion. So Jerry takes settlement, finishes Colosseum, and takes Great Wall and builds another warrior here. So extra warriors definitely makes sense with Great Wall though. Gabriele seeds, flips development science. Took the development of religion, develops knights, plays medieval army, plays patriotism, build a knight here, and takes reserves. So we're in a weird spot. Gabriele is kind of pushing strength already. He is actually threatening to go up to 11 strength if he wants to. And knights is on the row, but it's at 3 civil actions. There is definitely an argument to be made to take knights here. I don't know if I would do so, even though I value it so highly. I think with the alternative leaders of Khan and Nostradamus, maybe you can get away with not doing that, not taking knights on 3, and just work within your own civilization a little bit more. So if you really, really highly value strength, you could take knights here. I don't think it'd be the best for the best overall, just because it's so expensive on 4 civil actions. And overall, I do like this style of turn that Amaj takes. So Amaj finishes library, goes for iron, plays stockpile, and increased production. So I do like the fact that you just worked within 1 civil actions, being as civil action efficient as possible. I just think that maybe bread and circus is a consideration here, just because age 1 doesn't really have any wonders that can help with happiness. So it's very possible that we'll need some sort of happiness solution, and bread and circus is here for 1 civil action. I'm not sure that I would actually take it though. I'm just saying it's a consideration. I do like the whole idea of just getting out the flow actions, developing your production, that sort of thing. Hippie takes development of religion. Also, like another reason that we wouldn't take bread and circus here is because we took the development of religion. So something like Joan plus temples could be perfectly fine already. Anyways, going back to Hippie's turn, builds a lab, increase population, builds a swordsman, and upgrades and upgrades. Jerry offers open border, Hippie, builds another warrior, has skipped out on the slab for a while, starts on Great Wall. So 1 science production, but is maybe thinking about printing presses instead. Gabriele seeds, flips scientific breakthrough, plays reserves for food, increase population, builds a lab, starts building, continues building on Roman roads. So could have maybe pushed for strength here, chose not to, and decides to just play it a little bit more economic instead. Which I think is kind of a relief for the other players, to be honest. Although Hippie and Jerry can more easily defend, Amaj is a little bit in trouble just because she only has 2 military actions. So, ninth, although I was considering maybe taking it on 3, actually fell to 1 civil action. So I think this is a gift. I think that this is definitely a take 100% of the time. The rest of the turn I like for the most part, but I do think that these knights need to be taken. So Amaj takes Meji, increases production with a mine, and increase population to get out of corruption. You can take knights instead of increasing population because you would have had enough, because we would have had just enough blue cubes outside of that. So even though we have the Legion, I still think the Knights is super important. Like I said, I've been talking about it a while because of Gabriele having it. Hippie now takes the Knights, takes Machu Picchu, upgrades a warrior to get out of corruption, and adopts Legion. Jerry cedes, flips historic, Gabriele takes it for 1 warrior, increases population, builds another warrior, takes cartography, and develops cartography. So with all these warriors built, with Great Wall only a couple steps away, has enough resources to finish it, Jerry is already threatening the 13 strength here. Although the production is very lacking, 13 is pretty tough for Amaj to deal with until Meji is built. And we're just set up in a position to be pretty weak compared to the others right now, without any military attacks especially. But Himeji does a lot in defensive games, so maybe it's okay. Gabriele seats, flips vast territory. Jerry wins this with pretty cheap amount. Gabriele takes Saladin, elects, finishes Roman roads, but has upgraded the medieval army tactic here. So for this turn, Amaj takes Shishka, built a warrior here, increased population, and built a lab. So I do like the building a lab part. I do think that Zhishka is a little bit unnecessary here. Joan, especially with the temple event built, is effectively the same. Plus you get a little bit of knowledge of the event deck. I think that with the temple built, you can get just as much strength with the theology in a situation where we need the happy face already. We've already used our free population, so we are looking to the fact that we need a happiness solution here for the next warrior, so we don't deal with happiness problems H2. I do know that from future events, I think Amaj is playing around the fact that we get good harvest. But even if that happens, it doesn't matter. We'll still have population issues because if we lose 3 yellow cubes with 1 floating, we'll still have happiness issues. So I think Joan plus theology makes a lot more sense than Shishka here. Hippie takes iron, has Machu Picchu, so looking to actually use it. Builds a swordsman, goes up to 11 strength. Jerry cedes, flips call to arms, loses, so Jerry and Gabriele lose some civil actions, finishes Great Wall, builds another warrior, develops printing press. Amaj cedes, flips good harvest, increases pop, builds a knight, takes Silk Road, and takes strength. So Gabriele is very much projecting that he doesn't have a defense card here, or only has 1 defense card here, is what I mean to say. Yeah, can't defend otherwise. Yeah, okay. Even without the strength, can't defend. Without the strength, can't defend. So needs it to defend himself. Sorry. Amaj takes irrigation here, takes bread and circus, increases production, and takes frugality. So I do think the bread and circus pick is pretty necessary, first off. After that, I think the irrigation pick and the frugality pick are too expensive. We already have a way to spend resources in hand and on board with alchemy and Himeji. So we don't really need another outlet and going to irrigation. Irrigation is also pretty late, even though I like it a lot. I think the fact that we are on 4 civil actions really limits or really makes us play in our hand and our board more. I don't really want to be taking cards in this position very often because we're able to get the cards out. We want to play the cards out of our hand first before we take more cards. So basically knowing that we're going to need bread and circus soon, I would probably, instead of taking irrigation and frugality, maybe play bread and circus or alchemy and then increase population. Like 1 of those or 2 of those 3 actions I think should be played. It always takes like 3 civil actions it takes 4 civil actions to take, develop, and then upgrade twice. So the fact that we're trying to upgrade alchemy and upgrade irrigation on 4 CA, it's not really going to happen. Especially because we have 2 more civil actions to burn with Himeji. Yeah, we just, again, need to look at that. So too expensive to take 4 CA. That's the summary here. especially because this frugality, it really doesn't make any sense. After we increase population, this food is just going to float for no additional value. Hippie offers trade routes, takes code of laws, switches to Columbus, increases population, builds on Machu Picchu. I mean, probably should upgrade there instead, but whatever. Jerry seats, flips new deposits, switches to Con, builds one more warrior here, and is in like very, very deep corruption. Is pretty strong at 16, but it's going to adopt Gabriele's medieval army tactic with Con now and go up to 22 here. So all right, 22 is pretty strong. It's been projected for a while with Great Wall, with the possibility of Con going for warriors instead. And we didn't really respond, or Amaj didn't really respond in taking any of the possible military attacks that were on 1CA. Good thing is that pretty much nobody is in very good position to defend. Even if Gabriele builds another army here, they're way lower in strength. Hippie also doesn't really have any way to defend, especially with even because the open borders makes it even worse. So there's not like one single target that Jerry can target. So this also is just, even though this is super threatening, we can see that this is a really, really big cost to Jerry's civilization, and it needs to pay off in some way. There is worse than base production here because there isn't even a second lab yet, or a second library or whatever. And other players' economies are set up a little bit better. Like Amaj already has fully upgraded iron. Hippie is ready to upgrade. And Gabriele is the only one without any real upgrades, but will have some science going for him in H2 with Roman roads and Silk Road. So this is super threatening. It looks super threatening, but at the same time, it comes at a really big cost. And it's a really, really high variance strategy. So just want to note that looks like it's quote unquote a game winning position, but it's really, really not. And the strength really has to pay off. And it's not going to pay off with H1 aggressions at least. Gabriele takes irrigation, upgrades, just upgrades once, builds a warrior, and that's it. So can't defend anyways, just drops the strength and goes for civil action instead, which totally reasonable. So we're in a position where nobody can defend. If you're in a position where nobody can defend, technically you don't really have to respond to it that much because Jerry can only really hit one person at a time. So the key to doing something like this is just out eco, out greed. At this point, because there's not a lot of defense, Amaj is actually in the position to probably defend the best if you get Swordsman plus Himeji out. With extra military actions, there is possibilities of actually defending aggression. So I think Amaj's position is probably the most safe among all three of his opponents. So here, from this position, Amaj finishes Himeji, takes Swordsman, and that's probably the minimum you need to do in order to defend. Unfortunately, this means you can't really take code of laws here. If it was one civil action over, it might make a difference. But passing Swordsman to Jerry, who can upgrade them to get 6 more strength, is probably a little bit too much, especially because Hippie already has Swordsman, so you can't really deny that. I do want to say that even though Himeji is built here, we're already in corruption anyways. I think that I would have gone for the Swordsman instead. So just because if we develop the Swordsman, upgrade 3 times, we use all of our H1 military actions since we value H2 military draws more than H1 ones. The defense isn't even there with Himeji, so because the sack plus a warrior is only +4, +6 from here, and there's a 12 difference, so we can only cover 10 at most. So yeah, I think the Swordsman just a little bit better, just to be a little more efficient with our military actions here. If we want to go full greed though, there is a line where I think we take Warfare, develop it, and finish Himeji, or even more greed and just ignore it completely, take Code of Law so we can get more civil actions, just because it's going to get hit anyways. The problem with these things is that Jerry gets Swordsman and very easy upgrades, so it's probably not the right play overall. But we can see that in H1 here, we have so many yellow cards to take, we have so many technologies in hand because we took so many, and we just haven't had time to develop them all. So if they were all out of hand, if we had spent the turns, the civil actions actually putting the cards out of hand is what I mean to say, I would feel a little bit more comfortable with how we progress this game. But since everything is stuck here, and we're on such low CA, it's really hard to make transitions or improvements into our infrastructure. Anyways, go on Hippie's turn. By the way, H just ended here. Uh, Hippie packed again, I believe. Finishes Machu Picchu. Takes breakthrough. Takes reserves. Jerry aggresses Gabriele. I don't believe Gabriele has a free population, which would have hurt anybody, except for Hippie as much, I guess. Actually, it would hurt Hippie just as much. So, aggressive Gabriele takes iron and upgrades twice. So, really behind in science still, besides the increased production or resource production instead. Gabriele flips Foray, finishes Silk Road, and that's the whole turn. So that's actually the end of Age 1. It's actually been 10 rounds already. So finally for everybody to have their first turn it's been 9 rounds, which I think is just an extremely, extremely long Age 1 already. I already talked about people's positions overall. I basically don't think that Jerry is in a great spot here, even though he's so threatening. The only problem is if people can defend or not. So if the strength pays off, then Jerry might be in a good position. Right now, though, he's actually playing a lot from behind and hoping for good draws. I think Amaj is actually doing pretty well with a lot of science banked, resource production fully upgraded, and can defend here as well compared to the others. Hippie's resource production is actually upgraded as well. Doesn't really take much to get a good amount of resource production going, and I think is just going to resign himself to be weak for a while. Gabriele is probably in the worst position, just because he doesn't have military action to defend, so he's subject to pretty much anything that happens here. All right, going on to Amaj's turn. We're in a pretty weird spot because our hand is super clogged. I think that, if we had done what I said earlier, like increased population, developing bread and circus, or alchemy, this would be a little bit cleaner. But I think the best course of action here, even though that it's hard to do so, is we have to increase population to deal with our happiness issues. We have to develop something, and then I think we have to take rifleman here. In general, it's super weird because we want code of laws. We want to actually develop our civilization. But rifleman here, with Jerry having this available, with not guaranteeing Hippie gets it or not, I think that the potential for Jerry to actually get rifleman here, upgrade 6 of his stuff for plus 12 strength overall, so 34, is just too much this early. I think that also the fact that we're on iron already makes this decision a little bit easier. We don't have to commit to the swordsman, even though we took 2 civil actions for it last turn. I think rifleman overall is just going to be a lot better. Yes, it's a little bit civil action inefficient, but if we stifle Jerry's potential offense, if we upgrade for 2 strength each upgrade instead of just 1, I think overall the position is just a lot more favorable. But what Amaj does instead is, I forgot that Code of Laws actually falls off, so we don't even have that option anyway. So what Amaj does instead is place Regality, which is pretty much a mistake since this food is going to float here. Play Swordsman, goes for Bread and Circus, builds a Bread and Circus, and then upgrades the Warriors 3 times, and we don't get any H2 draws here. Granted, in this situation, we can defend all the way up to 23 potentially with 3 cards here. So we are temporarily safe, but if Hippie doesn't take these riflemen, we're probably in a lot of trouble here. Hippie plays reserves for food, increased population, takes Universitas, and leaves these riflemen, even leaves it on one civil action. So Hippie didn't pull through for us, and we didn't make the play to go for riflemen, so Jerry's going to have a much easier game from here if he decides to go for riflemen this route. Even though he doesn't have a lot of science yet, we can see that we'll see that the event deck does favor this to come out. So, sorry, I forgot. Hippie actually builds 2 more units. He goes up to 16 strength. So technically, he can also defend much more easily as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Hippie also played Columbus for inhabited territory there. So Jerry cedes, flips Knowledge to Ancients. So now we know that Riflemen is inevitable. 4 science, we know it's inevitable. It's already going to happen. So, and then builds 1 more warrior for 7 warriors total, which is a crazy imbalance already this early. Remember, we do have to balance this with the fact that this production is actually really not good, and if this rifleman wasn't in play for Jerry, this just would not be a strong game for blue. Anyways, moving on. Gabriele increased population, rebuilt the farm that he lost from enslaved a long time ago. Goes for Napoleon, and it's technically defensible until until these upgrades happen, which is pretty much true for everybody. Maj here. So while I talked about playing from the hand before, that was really more about age 1 techs. The fact that selective breeding here and scientific method here are much bigger improvements and would basically get double the double the income. I think that going for one of these would be a lot better than playing this alchemy or irrigation here. I'm not saying that we have enough civil actions to take both, but I think that if we're going to choose one to go for, I think we take selective breeding here and just upgrade it twice. It's pretty simple. It's our biggest bottleneck right now. We have a lot of science already. So I think that what Amaj doing here by going for this irrigation, it just doesn't really make any sense. And then also goes for the alchemy as well. I just don't think it makes sense. We have a much better production building if you take develop and then upgrade once. That's as many civil actions as it takes to develop and upgrade irrigation twice with the same amount of civil actions. So yeah, we don't need to go for the alchemy yet. We still have a good amount of science. I thought, like I said, it was the worst card a while ago, especially because of the library, and it's definitely one of the worst cards to develop right now. That being said, I'm not sure that I would make the same play with scientific method here for 2 civil actions, assuming that this was just another blank card that we wouldn't be able to take. Taking scientific method, developing it, and only upgrading once, while it is better than alchemy, it's not our biggest bottleneck. So I think in that case, I would probably go for the irrigation, but with selective breeding here, I think that's just the much better choice. And then upgrades the warrior to get out of corruption. Hippie seeds, flips border conflict, so we actually lose that as Amaj. Takes architecture and takes selective breeding here. Now, Jerry has a plan. Had that plan a while ago. Has a military plan. It's going to get paid off here, especially getting that rifleman. Granted, there weren't that many draws to get a war, but this is the 3rd turn in age 2, so I believe that just at least a couple chances gives you something like a 20-30% chance to get a war or something like that. Maybe even higher. Anyways, Jerry upgrades the warriors, upgrades production a little bit. It's really going to get paid off. There's really nothing that Hippie can do to defend appropriately. In theory, the best defense would involve knights somehow, but then it would also require a lot of disbanding. Knights and classic armies somehow, but then it would require a lot of disbanding. So this is a pretty devastating war, and I talked about how Hippie resigns really early on, and it happens after this turn. And I think a lot of the game after this kind of devolves because AI really can keep themselves in a very weak position for too long. So Gabriele cedes. Let's Reign of Terror. So Amaj gets hit by that again. Thankfully, the open borders hits first, and then the Reign of Terror hits. So at least the lost population isn't like doubly effective. Takes strategy here, develops it, and then takes scientific method. So here, Amaj loses a farm, rebuilt it, so didn't really lose much, and then takes cannons here. I don't know if building a farm right away is necessary. Actually, I don't know if disbanding the farm is even the right choice in the first place. I think that disbanding a lab makes a little bit more sense, get that food population still going, or production still going. Because one of the cards that could be important here, or actually one of these 2 cards, reserves or wave of nationalism, could actually be pretty important here. So not disbanding at all, not rebuilding at all. What happens here? Or sorry, yeah, not increase population, not rebuilding here. I think you need to build the farm to get out of corruption. So I guess we have to increase population, take cannons, and take one of these 2 cards. Can't take both. I am fairly certain that because these cavalrymen are skipped and these cannons are gone right away, I assume that Amaj has a tech already somehow with only the 1 draw, a tactic with only the 1 draw. Otherwise, it's actually pretty important to get these cavalrymen as well. Cannons are great, but it's costing civil actions here. If this is a speculative pick, it's too expensive. If it's a correct pick because of the tactic, then it's definitely the best pickup to get. Otherwise, things like reserves for food, basically, wave, cavalrymen are also very important. Anyways, going on to this turn, But yeah, I do want to go back and recircle around that. I think this lab is probably the least important building here as opposed to the farm. Anyways, you can see Hippie abandons, yeah, and then the AI does stuff, and it's just gonna stay weak for a really long time, and they they just do stuff like this. So it's gonna be really difficult for me to comment. I really don't like talking about AI, so it's whatever at this point. Jerry steals a code of laws plus a couple science, and then hits a plunder through. So that strength really did pay off. It never would have happened if this. It basically never would have happened if these riflemen weren't in play. So a lot of this is all of this could have been prevented. Anyway, builds a library. Jerry and then Jerry upgrades one more warrior, takes cannons, and selective breeding. So what was a pretty tough position before, it's definitely going to be improved over the next few turns. Gabriele flips in certain borders. Amaj is the one who loses. Takes code of law, or sorry, takes justice system, increases population, goes for scientific method, and upgrades one. In theory, Gabriele can defend. Only needs 2 defense cards. Has plenty of military actions. So Gabriele has kind of been the most safe for a bit here. Doesn't really have any military techs, but aggression-wise, Gabriele is set for a while. Amaj upgrades the lab, destroys a temple, builds an arena, and develops cannons. I don't know what this turn is about at all. This turn was about rebalancing This turn was about trying to be civil action efficient, I guess, but also spent some actions rebalancing temple into an arena, which doesn't seem necessary since happiness was already covered for the most part. I want to point out that we have 17 science to start off before this turn. Cannons was developed and not even built, so I think Constitutional Monarchy is just the best pickup by a lot. We play Constitutional Monarchy, develop it right away, and then I think our leader can be either Robespierre or Gaudi here. Robespierre if we wanted to save a little bit science, Gaudi because it actually worked with the 3 urban building civilization, and could save a little bit of science in the future as well if we want to build more anything, which we probably do since we definitely want team sports or, even more preferential professional sports later. So pretty much any turn that involves taking one of these leaders plus Constitutional Monarchy is, I think, basically required. I don't see anything else that you can do here. And it would just set us up for the best game in the future. If we look at the other leaders and wonders, there's only Shakespeare and Bach left to be picked, and obviously those don't really synergize with our civilization without any theaters and not a lot of population. So we really need to look at what's available, and I cannot stress how important it is to pick the right leader and government here. Anyway, Hippie's bought, builds a lab, takes urban growth, takes Gaudi. Jerry gets a spy through on Amaj, so now he can't even go for Constitutional Monarchy, but Jerry takes it anyways and can develop it through that spy. Keep in mind though, if we had a lot more military actions, we might have actually been able to defend this. I don't know how true that is, but at least it would have been a deterrent. Then Jerry goes for Constitutional Monarchy, goes for selective breeding, upgrades a warrior again, takes architecture, takes cavalrymen. So, yep. Gabriele cedes, flips cultural influence, takes Suez, takes riflemen. That's it. So I think we're actually in a pretty lucky position here. I think that this ocean liner being here is very lucky that Gabriele went for Suez instead of ocean liner. One of the things that we really need to think about is how we're going to advance from this game from here. And almost always I'll try to preach that population is extremely important. We're only on irrigation, so we're not going to be able to get that much population through natural food production. Ocean liner, plus all the resources that we have available, could make it a lot easier for us to progress. We don't necessarily need to look into upgrading our resource and science production at the moment. And then if we cover ocean liner completely for a population, we can have a lot of flexibility in where we want to put it. So we still have 11 science. I think the best option is to take a Republic here, develop it. That'd be 3 civil actions. Take ocean liner, 6 total. then we can increase population and then build cannon here. I don't know if we can defend anyways, and Republic might actually might not be the government for us. But the problem is that Gabriele is also looking for a government, and will probably take constitutional monarchy at any civil action cost. So it seems to me that Republic is a tough choice to make here, but our only other choice is despotism. We don't have any other military actions through Napoleon or Robespierre anymore, but we do need the actual civil actions that Republic provides. We just have to pray that we get military theory relatively early, because Gabriele already has strategy here, and this is part of the reason why I think that taking constitutional monarchy should have been so highly valued last turn. We had it available. It increases our options a lot, and we're going to lose a military action once Zizka goes away. Instead, Amaj increased population goes to the cannon, which I like. Takes Republic, which I like, goes to Republic. But the rest of the actions I really don't like, which is takes Revolutionary Idea and takes Watt. Watt, I think, is actively a bad leader to go for in this situation, because we don't need to increase our iron into coal. We don't need to increase our irrigation to selective breeding. Selective breeding is a card that we already passed up on one civil action. And especially because the ocean liner is here, we have the resources to actually finish it next turn. It should have just been the play. Anyways, bot does bot things. Takes journalism. Jerry seats. Flips strategic territory. By the way, for as much strength as Jerry has, there's only been two aggressions and one war. So honestly, it hasn't been the worst. Granted, Jerry didn't have a lot of military actions to draw a lot of cards, but I think this Age 2 only went okay for Jerry. There's still not like full science development out here. The resource and food production is not like amazing. It's obviously fully upgraded, but it's not like so far ahead. And the biggest bottleneck here later on is military later after Khan goes away. This strength drops a lot. So without some science, or without population rebalancing, Jerry is not really much of a military threat as soon as Age 2 ends. Anyways, increases population, takes engineering genius, and starts one step of the statute to get out of corruption. Gabriele seeds, flips rebellion, no one is affected. Takes organized religion, takes sufficient upgrade, starts building on Suez, and plays reserves, and builds another step as well. So I talked about how Watt was probably the worst choice to pick. I think Bach was probably the easiest transitional leader after Gaudi, just because you only need operas here. And I think that having Watt in general just sets you on a pretty bad path. It doesn't really advance towards like any particular plan for Age 3, and it takes a lot of civil actions to go for coal and selective breeding or mechanized agriculture and oil. It's civil actions that you could spend taking other yellow cards, or increasing culture production in some way, because we're actually not in a bad position here. If we have another farm, we can have pretty good food production for the rest of Age 3. If we upgrade our happiness to professional sports, we're set in happiness the rest of the way. And honestly, 5 science is not that bad, assuming we get things like breakthrough revolutionary ideas as well. I think the rest of the game really comes down to these decisions in Age 2, how we want to set up our game plan. Because we're not going for like this Bach opera idea, or we're not going for Gaudi, we don't really have a culture-related plan, even though that we're on Republic. It's going to be really, really hard to advance a military plan, because we don't have a culture plan, we don't have a military plan based on our government. We're frozen here, and we don't have a lot of population to go into urban buildings either. So anyways, what Amaj does is that spends swordsman, rebalances to a cannon, reveals fortifications, goes for Watt, and then takes Louvre and breakthrough and coal. I actively think that Louvre is a bad pickup here. I think that going for operas in general is a pretty good idea in the future. There's Chaplin and Marlena and Hollywood in the future. And then I think that coal is actually the worst of the two of these to pick up. We don't really need resources. We need population more than we need resources. And then another reason to touch on why Watt is bad is because even though it gives discounts on these buildings, we don't really have a lot of science, and we don't want to spend it on something that doesn't necessarily help us progress through the game. I'm sorry, not progress through the game. Go through a winning game plan. Or yeah, so basically, I think that we're lost in a situation where we just don't have a game plan to actually try to win. I will go through the rest of the turn and show an overview after. Bot goes in agreement, international trade agreement with Jerry, takes Republic, and continues to do bot things. Jerry gets a spy off on the bot, goes for Shakespeare, goes for opera, finishes statue, goes for opera, and really increases culture production a lot here. Gabriele cedes, flips inhabited territory, flips independent sect relation, goes for constitutional monarchy, goes for navigation, and finishes Suez here with inhabited 2. So this is finally ended H2. This has already been a really long game. This is turn 15, and it's only just the start of H2. So turn 16 is the first turn in H3. We can actually look through this overview, and we can see that even though that Jerry dictated the pace for most of the game, there are some things that he struggles with too. The army isn't balanced well. His strength dropped a lot. He will get a lot of culture production by building pretty cheap operas and stuff. But science is pretty low, and this is actually a manageable position for Amaj here. The cards definitely need to fall pretty well. The draws definitely need to be good too. But if we had a plan to go for culture, maybe it's something that we can keep up in. And I think that's really the only plan that you can shoot for, because if we go for culture or science, maybe we can get a strength. We can get some points through impacts. But like I said, with Republic, only 2 military actions. We've already lost the option to go for military, and that military theory is just what we're relying on here. Otherwise, Gabriele's production is also finally getting up there. Everything is okay. Nothing is stand out. But the position overall is just solid. Anyways, going on to Amaj's turn. Seeds, flips arm industry, everybody gets a little something. Goes for coal here, which I don't really agree with. Goes for loot here, and increases coal one more time to get out of corruption. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think that in order to actually make a good game here, is we definitely want another farm, but it costs military action. Or we go for selective breeding, get more population that way, or more food production that way. I think that in some lines you want opera, or some lines you want multimedia. And I just think that because of the idea of going for coal in lieu of last turn, we kind of locked into it. And I don't think this sets you up to try to win the game. Yeah. The bot here, plus frequent movement. Upgrades production more, builds more swordsmen, takes modern infantry, takes rich land. Jerry here flips international negotiations. Moves a temple into a opera, I believe, or philosophy into an opera. Develops multimedia, upgrades to a library, takes efficient upgrade. So here we can see Jerry's culture production is basically going to be unmatched by the others. Gabriele cedes, flips Cold War for Jerry and Gabriele, goes for Mandela. Switches, takes Red Cross, takes military buildup, and starts building on Red Cross. Here, military theory did fall, so this is definitely the best card to take. I completely agree with this, and it finally does open up some possibility of war plans. And then we take back Ag, which I don't really agree with. And I don't agree with it because I think that Revolutionary Idea and reserves for 1 CA each just might be a little better. Mechanized agriculture could definitely get out that population that I was talking about. But we're a little bit behind on science. Maybe we could use the reserves for food for an extra increase in population if mechanized agriculture doesn't fall for us. But we're at least in a position that is relatively threatening now. I just think that these two next turn could threaten a war a little bit better if we were to go down that route. We've already chosen to not go down the route of culture, So military is pretty much the only way we can pull something out. Bot goes for Marlena, builds on the cross, builds temple, grabs fundamentalism, grabs endowment. Super weak here. But one of the things about the bot is that the bot is definitely in last place here. Bad cultural production, bad strength. If you try to touch the bot, it will resign. Jerry Seeds, flips political strength. Good for Amaj. I'm hoping that there's a war in here somewhere. Develops architecture, upgrades to library, increased population, grabs revolution idea, and air force here. And reserves as well. Gabriele takes oil, upgrades to oil, finishes Red Cross, and takes rockets here. So something I want to note is that Gabriele and Jerry here are both much higher in culture than Amaj and higher production for the most part. Amaj here actually has Air Force on the row, even though it doesn't have a science. But if there is multiple wars in this hand, this could go in Amaj's way. Both Jerry and Gabriele don't have that many resources. Jerry has 14 with the reserves. Gabriele only has 16, possibly 19 with the tactic switch. So you can get under Hippie with a tactic switch here. So it could just be 19 resources. Of the two people here, I think that Jerry is a little bit more exposed in terms of weakness here. And then the max strength is either a positional army or a modern army with only one of each of these. The extra 4 resources doesn't do much, and although we can play for the event deck, maybe giving extra resources, I don't want to really calculate that into it. So right now, Amaj is at least threatening a war with an extra fortifications tactic with some disbands, and they can threaten a follow-up war with Air Force next turn with 2 more disbands. Yeah, it's pretty all in, but I think it's kind of the position that you need to take at this point. This only works really if you have 2 or more wars, trying to get both of the players that are threatening to you. If it would actually work, I have no idea, but I think it's the only winning line of play. Trying to wait for longer might mean that your opponents get a little bit extra resources, can develop their armies a little bit better. But right now they're on a turn where they can't do that much more than Amaj is threatening 46 at least, maybe can stack a little bit more to get higher than that. So, I mean, Jerry is threatening, like I said, the positional army or cavalry or the modern army. I think that only goes up to 45. So it is on the brink of not being safe, but it is just something that probably needs to be done, to be honest. Then Amaj here goes for an aggression on Jerry, sacking a swordsman. Yeah, I don't think you can afford that population loss. Goes for mechanized agriculture, upgrades, takes Air Force, and disbands the swordsman and builds a cannon. I don't know why it needs to be a cannon here. We do need to save that population for the Air Force in the future if there's a war here. But the threat of the war is actually very mitigated here since Amaj's total strength is only capped at 54 plus sack next turn, so 54 plus 5 next turn, which is not enough really to threaten a war if the others actually properly prepare. And it takes reserves the last turn. So here the bot resigns. Jerry offers international tourism, goes for a positional army, goes up to 43. Had a little bit more resources to do so, to get a little bit stronger, but not much more than 43. Remember, we were threatening at least 46 plus sack. And then takes urban growth. Gabriele seeds, flips vast territory, wins it for a knight, takes UN, and then goes for a Napoleonic army. Amaj only has the 54 plus 5 defense, both the 54 plus 5 war possibility. Both of his opponents only have, while the strength doesn't look that high, especially from Gabriele, with the resources available in hand, I think both these opponents can defend all the way up into the 60s. So with that, Amaj actually resigns. And then I guess I'll just finish the rest of this game. Jerry seeds, Develops rappers at a time. Takes military theory, develops military theory. Takes chaplain. Builds some stuff. Doesn't have enough resources to finish fast food chains. Right? Or does not have enough resources to finish fast food chains because he only has 11 plus a step, so it'll be 1 short. Gabriele doesn't seed, takes reserves, plays organized religion, does military build up for a second Napoleonic army. And then I think Jerry realized he screwed up by not taking reserves and tries to aggress for plunder. Gabriele defends. Doesn't matter though, plus 30 culture. And then Gabriele finishes UN, doesn't evaluate anything. Goes for pro sports. And the game ends with Jerry winning this game. So things that I want to talk about overall is that I think we need to talk about the game plan through age 1, age 2, age 3. In the very beginning of the game, we discussed a lot about threat assessment, taking cards, when you should take them, actually responding to the threats that are possible and what cards to value. I think that overall, Amaj probably needed a little bit of help of recognizing that there was a strength push in the game. So while there was knights and swordsmen on 1CA very early, we never actually took that opportunity to take those cards and put ourselves in a defensible position the whole game. Amaj also taking alchemy and irrigations when they weren't necessary. They were just not important to the game at that time. Used a lot of valuable early civil actions. I think that in general in H1, especially with strength possibly being threatened, you can't really expect to upgrade more than one of irrigation or iron or alchemy. You can maybe expect to do 2 of them in some games, especially ones that are a little bit more economically greedy. And maybe you can do all 3 of them if you go for alchemy first, somehow have Machu Picchu and have irrigation and alchemy. The reason that I mentioned Machu Picchu is because irrigation will be generally built last of alchemy, iron, and irrigation. So you want the Machu Picchu in order to actually supplement the food income for the rest of the game as well. So there are very rare situations in which you'll actually get alchemy, iron, and irrigation, and I don't believe that this should have been one of them. Try to just upgrade one at a time, use the cards in your hand, and then you'll probably just have a much more smooth game because we spend the time actually playing the cards out as opposed to grabbing more cards. Near the end of age 2, I think that we actually still had a pretty good game plan, or a possibility of winning. I just think that there was no switch from economic to culture game, and that we didn't leave ourselves an option to go for military. So if we're going to go for economical route, we do need to leave ourselves that option in military by having more military actions, and Republic kind of stifled that plan for too long. Only being on Republic, only 2 military actions in age 3 means that we're not set up to have a flexible plan in age 3. If we went for like Republic and a culture leader, maybe that would have been a little bit better, but the fact that we went for culture and Watt means that we are stuck trying to play a culture game without a culture leader, or play a war game without the military actions. And then lastly, in age 3, it starts to get really, really tough from there because Jerry had Shakespeare, started building a bunch of pairs of urban buildings, but we should have still been in an okay position against Gabriele because our production overall was relatively equal, and there is some game to be played there. I think we didn't value our civil actions and science very well, though, and we felt like we needed to play only for military, which may or may not have been the case because we didn't have a culture-based leader, but I think we could have made plays into getting multimedia or journalism or opera out and trying to compete in the game peacefully as well. Fortifications is a very good defensive tactic, so we don't necessarily need to push that hard if the opponents are also not threatening that much strength, and maybe we can translate some of those extra resources into urban buildings and culture as well. Overall, I think it just has to do with looking about how you plan to exit each age and coming up with some sort of plan for it overall. When we get lost in taking too many cards or singularly focused on a style of play at the end of the game, it really looks like our civilization starts to flounder a little bit too much and not be streamlined into going into a specific race, whether it's arms race or culture race. Anyways, I know I talked a lot about this game, but I would like to once again thank Amaj for sending me this replay. I really hope that I wasn't too critical. I am just trying to provide an opinion on how to play more efficiently. It is just an opinion, it's not fact, of course. And everything that I've said in this video is just an opinion on efficient gameplay that really only affects me. So we're in this kind of scenario to improve as a group, to try and look at our games and improve our gameplay that way. And then lastly, once again, I'd like to say if anybody would like to post a replay code in any comment in any of my videos, I will be happy to look at them in the future. Once again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.